These are the top 5 defenses to target in your fantasy drafts. Let's kick it off with the Denver Broncos, who were the #1 scoring defense in fantasy last year, averaging 10.5 points per game. They led the league with 63 sacks, allowed the 3rd fewest points per game, and their 5 defensive scores were the most. They also had 15 interceptions and 10 fumble recoveries. Already top tier, they got even better this offseason, signing All-Pro safety Talanoa Hufanga and inside linebacker Dre Greenlaw. Let's not forget, they still have reigning Defensive Player of the Year Pat Surtain and a couple of young edge rushers that are on the rise in Nick Bonito and Jonathan Cooper. When looking at Denver's strength of schedule, they're kind of in the middle of the pack. But in my opinion, their schedule is more favorable than indicated, and they're as close to matchup proof for a defense as one can get. Now, if there's one area they are leaving something to be desired, it would be special teams, but they should contribute more than enough elsewhere to make up for it. Coming in at number 2 is the Minnesota Vikings, last year's #2 scoring defense in fantasy. They led the league in interceptions, and they still have Brian Flores. In his 2 seasons as the defensive coordinator, the Vikings have been near the top of the league in terms of blitz percentage, and have been excellent at creating pressure when doing so. And while I have all the confidence in the world in Kevin O'Connell, JJ McCarthy is still an unproven quarterback at the NFL level. So I have to think they're going to follow the typical formula for a young quarterback, which is lean into the running game and rely on the defense. The Vikings finished 4th in sacks and had 3 defensive scores, and they brought in Javon Hargrave and Jonathan Allen, which should bolster an already impressive pass rush. Now, a couple of things to keep in mind. 1, they have the 7th toughest schedule on paper. And 2, they scored 75% of their points last year in their first 10 games. So they did fall off a bit in the second half of the season. Number 3 on the list is the Houston Texans. They started off a bit slow last year, but finished off as the #5 scoring defense in fantasy. And from weeks 6 through 18, they were number 3. Their 19 interceptions were the 2nd most, and they tied the Vikings for the 4th most sacks, with 49. And I think they're going to have one of the best secondaries in the league. Between Derek Stingley, Kamari Lassiter, and trading for CJ Gardner-Johnson, they have a good chance to surpass their interception total from last year. And let's not forget about their pass rush. Will Anderson should be at full strength now after being slowed by an ankle injury in the second half of the season last year, and they still have Danielle Hunter, who should remain a force. Their schedule strength is average, but closer to favorable, but as long as D'Amico Ryans is the head coach, this unit should continue to push for top 5 production. The one thing I would call out is the fact that they were a bit prone to giving up points last year, so if they're not generating sacks or creating turnovers, they may have an occasional dud. Number 4 on the list is the Philadelphia Eagles. The Eagles finished as the 7th highest scoring defense in fantasy last year, but from weeks 9 through 18, they were tied with the Broncos for the top spot, generating 91 points during that stretch. They allowed the 2nd fewest points per game and led the league in forced fumbles with 22. It seems as though Vic Fangio was able to unlock Jalen Carter and Jordan Davis, and I would expect that trend to continue this year. Now, their secondary is going through a bit of transition with the departures of CJ Gardner-Johnson and Darius Slay, so it may be difficult for them to match their 13 interceptions from last year, but they still have Reed Blankenship, Cooper DeJean, and Quinyon Mitchell, so they may very well hold steady. And let's not forget, Howie Roseman is a magician. He very well could bring someone in to shore up this back end. Philadelphia does have one of the toughest schedules on paper, but that shouldn't deter you from viewing them as one of the top options. Number 5 on the list is the Baltimore Ravens. The Ravens did not live up to their high expectations last year, finishing the year as the 12th highest scoring defense in fantasy. But that is actually a bit misleading, since they scored most of their points in the final 3 weeks. From weeks 1 through 15, they were ranked 23rd. On a positive note, they did have the 2nd most sacks with 54, but they were in the bottom half of the league in terms of forced fumbles and interceptions. I personally think this was a bit of an anomaly, and they have made the moves needed to shore up this secondary, bringing in Jair Alexander, Chidobe Awuzie, and drafting Malachi Starks to pair with All-Pro safety Kyle Hamilton. And let's not forget they still have 2 of the league's best in Roquan Smith and Nnamdi Madubuike, who should continue to play at an All-Pro level. And of course, having Derrick Henry should take some pressure off of this defense, and even though the Ravens have the 9th toughest schedule, they still have a top 3 offense, which should allow this defense to take some chances. In terms of honorable mentions, I want to call out the Steelers, Seahawks, and Rams, who very well could ascend through the ranks as the season goes on. Now, my sleeper defense this year is the San Francisco 49ers. There's a lot to like here. For one, they brought back defensive coordinator Robert Saleh, and even though they kind of cleaned house, they still have Nick Bosa, Fred Warner, and Diamador Lenore. They also drafted very well and have the easiest schedule on paper. On a final note, I would say consider streaming your defenses each week. This is a strategy that I tend to use because injuries, game plans, and weather are all highly variable. And as we saw last year, defenses that were irrelevant early on, like Cincinnati and Atlanta, started to pop off and surge towards the end of the season. So playing the wire for your defense is a very viable strategy. I want to thank you for watching. Good luck in your upcoming drafts. Please subscribe and let me know your thoughts on the upcoming fantasy season in the comments below.